Yeah, but I say definitely thank you for your word. Definitely, I say I know it's necessary. So,
Well,
um,
you're more than welcome to tell your story because that's why we have voices to be heard. I think, when we talk about things here on Voices to be Heard, we I think the reason why we do this is so people can hear the stories and know that it relates to someone. So if you don't mind, you can get right in. You don't have to give your brother's name. You don't have to give your name, but tell us a story of how your brother was abused. Oh, look. And we get video. Go ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute.
he's not married to that person anymore, but often, you know, a, a woman, I guess she can say that somebody's abusing her, but when the police showed up, she didn't have any marks on him, but he had cuts all on him, and they end up removing her. But that was in Charles County. That wasn't in Prince George's County. Now I know, it's been the other hand, I guess, when people call them Prince George's County and they take um, possibly maybe what the woman has, shared. And that's not saying that things does not happen, but sometimes, by being a female, people get sorry, the relationship is over. A person could say, hey, he did this. And I met a mother who lost her son because a woman called, the police, and he was walking his dog and he came back home. He was on his way back home, and he ended up getting shot by the police because the young lady said he had a gun and he had no weapon on him.
Wow.
But he had walked the dog. She had said, hey, they was, fighting or whatever. He didn't even know what had happened. According to the records or whatever the case may be. But he
So
was.
so you're actually, it's almost like there was a there was a there was an altercation between the two people. He took
Mm-hmm,
his dog out for a walk to probably get away from the situation.
mm-hmm,
He calls the police, and then
mm-hmm,
they shoot him because she had told the police he had
mm-hmm.
access to a gun, or did he have a gun? Either way,
Either way,
the
they was already
cops,
ready for him when he
right,
came
they were
back.
already ready for him because it say like, and that happens, does this person have access to a gun? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm,
Without explaining, he didn't take it with him, or I
mm-hmm.
don't know if he has it with him. Maybe she
Right.
said, I don't know if he has it with him. Does he have access to a gun? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
But does he have it with him? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so I have I guess a lot of, I guess, different scenarios, and I definitely, love, appreciate women, but I know, sometimes men have, received an unfair share, and just, now that we talking about it, I said even like my daughter's father was a big time football coach, and his, ex-wife had said that he had assaulted her, and being a collegiate football coach,
It's fine.
that messed up his career.
Yep.
And my whole thing is, just because you don't want to be married and don't want the relationship anymore, work on that, but don't ruin anyone's career. And then after you ruin a career, then you say, hey, we need an income. He's not paying child support, but you caused him to lose a $250,000 job, for saying that he assaulted you and he wasn't a violent person, whatever the case may be. So if a person were out of a relationship, just get out of it. So I think that there need to be things in place, I guess, on both sides. And I think for that woman who lost her son to the lady that made a false report, it should be some type of consequences,
Yeah.
for that person, because
He
a
should
life was
at least
lost.
be in jail.
So
Yeah.
I met the daughter this summer, when we was out, doing, all the Black Lives Matter, rallies, and she talked about, hey, my father wasn't at my graduation, my father won't be at my wedding, um, just because, him and a young lady broke up, he wanted out of it. His life didn't have to be lost from that. So I think, even showing males, because I just saw the other day a friend of mine, her 18-year-old cousin was gunned down in DC, and that was all on the news. That was on Valentine's Day. So if people don't want the relationship, and maybe that's something that can be taught in school. Those are just interactions. Because even if you think about being a kid, sometimes kids don't want to be children friends. You can't get mad. You can't force them to be your friend.
Right.
So I think, people just learning that early on that sometimes you might not gel with people, but if you allow that behavior to continue, on without ever addressing it, it spills over to a person's adult life. Like, hey, that person's gonna be with me, you know, or I'm gonna kill you, So sometimes people will play like that. Hey, we not gonna be together. I'm gonna kill you, and then all of a sudden it's like people think somebody really, really gonna kill me here. I want to be with you. It's not working, So why should you force me to be here? So it's things like that. So I think that just having healthy relationship, and also not looking at your life like a movie. This is real life.
Right.
So
Right.
I know they have things in movies, but then all of a sudden when you take somebody else's life, because we see it all the time, so it could be a female and you'd be like, oh, she was just so nice, and why would somebody, do that to them? But you don't know the psyche on the other person's. And I think even us as family and friends, that we have to be a little more observant. So when you see your friend and she got a black eye, she got shades on, and there's no sun outside. Why you wearing them shades? That maybe you have to ask those questions and be like, oh, I just like my shades, but it's pitch dark.
Right.
Or a person, always wearing makeup, they can be covering up something. Um, so I think just asking, some of the questions, creating a safe space for that person, possibly could save lives. Because a lot of times I'm saying people just don't talk about it. They cover up. We watch what the movie, What Love Got to Do with It, and just saying what Tina Turner actually went to. And she was a public figure, a person that had to show up on stage and perform. But she was in an abusive situation, as far as with her hair, her makeup, her body. But she did not allow her to be to stop. But even, saying that, I'm like, man, she went through a lot, to be to perform and to make other people happy, but she was sad. And she had other people around her that saw how out of control, Ike was, but no one, was strong enough to even say, hey, girl, you can get out of this.
You
Hey,
know, when it comes to Ike, there were so many people who witnessed Ike, right? But when you go into people's homes and it's the two couple, right? And somebody says one did something to the other, that's all we ever hear.
mm-hmm,
We never hear what was their contributing factor, what was the circumstances. But what we stay very pointed on, no one should put their hands on anybody,
mm-hmm,
right? So that's where a lot of women will say, well, he put his hands on me, and it goes from there.
mm-hmm.
And even in your brother's situation, or the one when the cop shot the man with the dog, could he have put his hands on her first? Could she have put his hands on him first and then she
Mm-hmm.
called? Because we definitely very give a lot of leeway to women going, no, they would never put their hands on the male.
No, no, women be welling on, man. I'm saying we see it all the time. I'm saying what the lady bust the window out the car. That was like a hit song, right? Far as females. So if you want to bait it, whether or not if you're gonna touch a man or whatever, we've seen men cars, spray painted, cut,
Right.
keyed, whatever. Vice versa. I'm saying you may see, may go out, you may see, a man, slap somebody. But then I've also witnessed, saying, I say, because with the domestic violence, it goes both ways. And I've been at, like different women events, and now, what you hear women, I guess, that are in, non-traditional relationships or whatever, and they get abused. I've been in a bathroom, I'm thinking that, hey, that it's just women and they're talking, and it's a woman and they're beating up another woman.
Right.
So what do you say about that? And then, I heard, like at a woman's retreat, woman, pouring out her heart, saying that, hey, my mother wasn't accepting of this relationship. So a lot of times when I think those situations work the same, if you already isolated yourself in your family, you don't have a support. So that person already know, hey, I'm feeding you, I'm taking care of your children, you don't have no job. So it's really no difference. So that person didn't have an outlet. She almost lost her children because that person had everything, was showing that basically that person was unfit. So we have those situations now. So if a police, she said, hey, the police showed up. I guess when she called and it was like, hey, it's just
Yeah.
a woman. They thought it was going to be a man. So people not even prepared to deal with that. But still, is that right? So I guess far as what when those situations happen. But she said that the police looked like, hey, so what you want me to do? It's two women. It's like it wasn't to lock the person up. It was, oh, I thought it was a man. The child was having an altercation when you called or whatever. It was a distress call. Oh yeah, sister, y'all friends. It's like, oh, it's just
Yeah.
y'all just having a little spat. So I don't know. I just think that we mental health is real.
Mental health is real.
I think that people who have had to live with it and live in fear, the other person, harming them and not having a way out because even the person that is the heaviest saying, hey, I killed your whole family. So the
Right. Right.
person sitting there like, hey, I gotta stay here. He know where my mama live. He know everything, everybody that's important to me, and you getting all the threats. So
And
we
that's it.
need to
And
need
I
to
think
deal with
that's the
those things.
thing. And Tamara, how do we express? We don't want you living in fear because everyone's fear level is different. So fear is
Mm-hmm.
fear is fear. We shouldn't say, well, it wasn't that bad. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing to say. I don't think, like, if you were afraid, I don't think it was that bad. You almost undermine their own fear. And we should never
Mm-hmm.
undermine people's fear.
No, we
Mm-hmm.
should never do that. I think we all have our own, like you said, our own feelings toward what fear is and how we'll react, what are triggers. And we, as Latasha was mentioning earlier, we as friends and people that are close, we have to be able to be that support system or
Mm-hmm.
to recognize and allow that person to know, like, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, and you may or may not want to tell me, but I'm telling you as a friend, as someone that's close to you, I'm letting you know that I see something's not right
Mm-hmm.
and I want to be here to help you get the help you need. And fear can damage you not only physically but mentally as well. And as Latasha said, mental health is real. And as the abuser oftentimes has something that's going on, some mental trigger illness that's not quite working. And then that person that, whether male or female, always also has that mental distress that needs to be addressed. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's right now it's more important than ever, I feel, because there are a lot of circumstances that we can't control. So this virus and this pandemic, on top of all the social unrest that's happened within the last year or so, are triggers and mentally draining. I know for me, I have been mentally and emotionally drained by what
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeing happening, aloud, and people just don't care. And then just knowing the different changes that are happening
Within you.
personally with the
Hmm.
pandemic and things I have to do and adjust and address my personal life, it's all stressful. And then on top of that, I'm complaining, but you think about those men and women who are going through all of those things and then they're still in a toxic relationship in their home where they've been forced to stay and live.
Right.
um
Mm-hmm.
they never get a break. So
Nope.
I try to make that part of my prayer, that that person, whoever it is, just gets that relief and that release that they do need,
Let
because
me ask you both ladies a question. Natasha, thank you for coming on Voices to Be Heard. We do this every other Wednesday. We Voices to Be Heard. We like to hear the stories to be told because in the stories we see ourselves. And as we see ourselves, we get to say that this is not just happening to only me, but yet I know there's a support system out there. We know there's a support system out there. So the question I have for anyone who's listening and watching or however, if you're afraid in a relationship, again, it's not the level of fear. And I want to emphasize it's not the level of fear, but if you're afraid in a relationship, Do you think that's a relationship that you can be in?
No, I
Okay.
don't think you should be in a relationship where you're fearful of your spouse or the
Mhm.
environment. No. And
Mm-mm.
that relationship, and not only romantic, but that includes family and friends as well. That's relationships across the
So
board.
once the word fear is
Mhm.
introduced into like I'm afraid of you, that relationship, do you think it's over? It is over, or
Should be.
or okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
I agree. I agree with that one. Um, definitely. Um, because real love casts out fear. You wouldn't have to, fear anybody. Nobody should have to make you afraid of them for you to.
Love them or
That's
be.
like a form of control.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess when I think about that, it's a form of control, especially when you're grown up. Even as a child, you want your child to mind and listen to you,
Not be afraid of you.
not to be afraid of you because you love them or whatever the case may be, and you wouldn't bring any harm, to them. And and I guess since we talked about it, maybe also DC has a different law than what Maryland had. Let's say if I lived in DC and I called and I say, hey, you know, this person hit me,
Hmm.
they take both people, um, you know, they lock both people up that night. They not gonna just take one. They not gonna take my word over his word.
Okay.
So I think that they probably have less calls now. So I think the laws also plays a point in it also, I guess, with domestic violence. If you have tougher penalties, let's say if somebody witnessed it, I think people will probably stop doing it too, or whatever. But if it's more like, hey, oh, you asked for it, or whatever, you plucked his nerves, but those type of things,
Right.
um, then a person be like, they feel like they have any support. But if you have things in place and if it's really happening and a person, is able to prove it, then they can get some type of, support. So I think a lot of it has something to do with the laws that's in place because people only would do what they're allowed to get away with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so if you have things in place, sometimes people are second guess, just like what I said about the job.
Right.
So maybe if it wasn't a job and if somebody was sitting there well, you're gonna knock that person out or whatever. But because that person respect their job or their position and they have enough, restraining power, they didn't lash out. But a person who had nothing to lose may have that same woman. If you think about maybe our grandparents or different people, like, hey, you don't hit a girl. But then all of a sudden, when our parents became parents, they like, hey, if that person hits you, you defend yourself. So it's like, so it changed. No, I'm serious.
It did.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, because I'm like, you hit a girl. It's like my mama told me, if she tough enough to hit, what she take? If she tough enough to give a punch, she tough enough to take a punch. So women started to change from what their parents told them, like, hey, you don't hit her. So they got to know what the rules of engagement is too. If you want to lash off, because sometimes some of us do have bad tempers.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that goes to you were kind of talking about it before, like having something implemented in schools. Um, but I think it should be like problem resolution, like how to interact with people socially. I think it's easy for kids, I feel like nowadays, um, not to get those necessary gems when they're at school. Um, and people aren't necessarily going outside to play all the
Mm-hmm.
time. So it's more of I'm gonna be indoors playing on a game or on my phone on a computer, rather than getting those social skills and figuring out if I don't get along with said person, it is okay if I don't talk to them or I
Right.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's okay.
It is okay, and I know for sure that is a problem, and and not just to harp on like the younger people, but I think it's just something that along the years some people just don't grasp, and they have a sense of entitlement,
Mm-hmm.
that because you are with me or I am married to you, then I own you, I
Yeah.
ownership, and that doesn't exist for me. And so I'm praying that we are able to, and with with our show here, and as we continue to talk to people and our friends, they are aware that, you know what, or, you know, some light bulb turns on, like, you know what, they were talking about this and this resonates with me because, yeah, he does try to control what I wear, who I talk to,
Mm-hmm.
who I'm hanging out with. And that is a sign of abuse. And again, abuse um is not only in a romantic relationship, but again, family can be just as toxic, and friends can
Very.
be just as toxic. And it's important for us to recognize that and not make ourselves part of it.
But that toxic situation, I feel you. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, having daughters, niece, goddaughters. Definitely I wouldn't want anybody to, those are the things. Hey, if anybody got to put their hand on you, if I'm not putting my hand on you, I don't want nobody else putting their hand on
Exactly.
you. That if, and even with them, I think, being clear, hey, if you have a problem with them and you feel like you have to do that, come to me or whatever the case may be, because my family member's not going to be a punching bag.
Mm-mm.
Not for you. Whatever. If you're having a problem, let's talk about it, but don't put your hands on them. So I think even establishing that, with people who want to interact, with our loved ones and vice versa. If it's a male child, hey, if you have a problem with them, hey, let's talk.
I
But I don't want you, abusing, my nephew or my brother. I don't want that.
Yeah.
So if it's a problem, let's work it out, or whatever the case may be. Because you see so many situations when people end up dead or in jail.
Right.
It's an
Oh,
ugly situation. Somebody's gonna lose.
yeah.
So if
and
a person.
specifically the black community,
Mhm,
more often they end up dead quicker than they end up in jail.
yep, it happens. Yeah,
Hmm.
just that quick. Yeah,
And
as I
that's what's
said.
sad because we don't want our black people to not be able to call the police.
Yeah,
Hmm.
But it's a tough call, isn't it?
it
Yep,
is.
very tough call, because if they
It-
coming,
They're
they
coming, they're
come
coming.
they coming to kill. They be like blackmail.
yeah,
Uh,
Yeah.
exactly.
they ready. It's like they ain't even taking any chances, and we witnessed what we saw at the Capitol.
Hmm.
That we know that a lot of police officers can have good restraining power,
Yeah.
but a
All of
lot of
a
time.
sudden, they just magically are able to restrain and let people come with weapons. I mean, drawn. All of a sudden, we can
and,
talk things out.
and they never had any fear. I was like, man, they not afraid.
Wow.
They weren't
Nothing.
afraid, yeah. But if with us, I'm saying they afraid. So,
They
I
were
think
some of the
that.
finest police officer in the country that was
Yeah,
working
no,
that
no,
day.
that day I'm saying they had some model behavior. I'm like, wow, that's got great restraining power.
Great.
I was impressed. Yeah, so I think, yeah, if we can teach our children how to be to deal with things that just don't work.
Yeah.
If it don't fit, don't force it. type
Exactly.
type of message. We teach people, hey, keep your hands to yourself. You may have to count backwards, 100 to calm yourself down. Find some type of mechanism,
To get
because is it worth you going
away.
behind bars? Is it worth somebody having to go to a funeral looking at somebody, just because a person don't want to be with you, or things that work out?
Yeah.
One of the
Yeah.
things we talk about with domestic violence, and I'm glad you brought your comment on here, was really that males don't speak out on domestic violence.
Mm-mm.
There's something that is just not widely spoken, and yet it is a part of domestic violence,
Mm-hmm. I
even
think
if
it
it's
is.
verbal.
I know it can be verbal for them, especially maybe if career wise, or if they not meeting the expectation, they get abused too. But you can't be like telling your boys, "Oh yeah, man, she's abusive." A lot of times, the men say, "Man, be like, man, y'all be like, leave her. There's too many other women out there." Yeah, y'all do try if y'all see or whatever, but a lot of times it is very silent, because you all are not men, I guess, if you all have feelings. If you be
Right.
like, man, hey, that hurt my feelings. Hey, I like the baby to do better. I want to be there for my child. But every time I come, the person tear me down. Now I'm trying to maintain my cool or whatever, but the person make me feel like Fred Flintstone when he used to shrink or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
One of those type of moments. But um, Yeah, but you all have feelings too. So men have feelings too. We have feelings. So
Yeah, and
um
I wish men would talk more about it, honestly,
Me
because
too.
I think that having a woman talk to you and demean you is horrible, and it's not
mhm,
okay. And that's
mm-mm.
regardless of your stature, because she is being abusive, and then you allow. I feel like you allow that to, as Latasha was saying, to roll over to your relationship with the kids,
Hmm.
but then to roll over to your friendships and other relationships and just your actual well-being. And that's what this is. I mean, domestic violence is, I feel like, is an attack on the person, not only
Person.
physically but
Right.
emotionally. And
Mhm.
that is a destruction. Like, I can be completely stressed out and kill myself because of stress or due to stress. My body and my tempo is just deteriorating because of that. And that is, for someone, for you not to feel 100%. I know as a woman, there are days I don't feel 100%, but if I also had someone telling me every day how horrible I was, although I didn't feel like I was that horrible, I would start believing that. And
I
those are
believe in
things,
it.
yeah, and those are things that, people say for your kids. You want to feed them with affirmations and
But
not
Yeah.
them down.
isn't Tamara, isn't this
That's
conversation that women most often have now, barring none, the the flat out abusive people. I'm
Right.
talking about the physical bang, bang, bang. That is outside of that, women, when they don't feel like this man is doing what they believe he should be doing, is that undermining, or is that letting them know that they could be better? But the way they go about it is demeaning.
Yeah, I
And
think
is that abusive?
yeah, I think it's the way you approach it. So, like,
Okay.
if you are doing wrong as a man and we're in a relationship, I should be able to have that conversation with you.
Okay.
You know,
mhm.
if we said that we were going to save X amount of dollars, or you agreed to do something and you don't do it,
Mhm.
we should be able to have that conversation. But if
Like you got the ball.
yeah,
Mhm.
but if I can't have a simple conversation with you, and the only way I can communicate is to say how horrible of a person you are, and I don't know who raised you, just saying
Right.
some
Right.
vile
Mhm.
stuff, then that is abusive, and that shouldn't be accepted.
Because I think it's as subtle as, and me and my wife were talking about this. I think it's as subtle as driving in the car and going, "Man, that was a dumb like who drives like that? That is ridiculous." I mean, those subtle comments
Yeah,
to me is abusive.
yeah. And it's hurtful. And again, I think mentally, you're all that's going to be replaying
Hmm.
in your mind,
That's
right?
my
So
point. Right.
So
so
you're a
even
second
if
guess yourself.
yeah, even if she wasn't in the car, you will always be thinking like that. She would probably call me stupid
Right.
the way I changed that lane like that. And
Yeah.
that's just not it's just not okay. It's not okay across the board.
And I think we in our next week's show, a show like that, I think we will go more into that. I think it's the subtle comments. We've talked about some horrific abuse, and thank you, Latasha, for even bringing up the male issue with your brother and the other male. And I mean, and we try to be very equal, don't we? I think we try to be very equal, but we don't talk about the subtleties that builds up to it.
Yeah.
Just like
Mhm.
slight comments, like "you cooking that again." That's a hurtful comment.
And a
It's
person,
it
they can
is.
be doing their best.
It's
Yeah.
not even kind. Like you come in the house and like, what, you cooking that again? Whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Like so I think we gotta talk about slights and verbal uses of words that starts tearing people down.
Yeah. 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 It's something that I think, we all may at some point or have at some point said something you like, I shouldn't have said that. Like,
Yeah, that's hurtful.
that didn't come out the right way, and I feel like it was hurtful. But I think some people intentionally do that, although they
Mhm.
know it's going to, they know it's going to be hurtful, but they'll intentionally just say those things. And it's just, I think, man or woman, you have to
Mhm.
set those boundaries and make sure you are not accepting someone
Mhm.
talking to you any type of way. And I mean, I feel like, not to go off on a tangent, but that can be like at work. I often hear like where
Mm.
we feel their supervisors or some superior will talk to them some type of way. And I've always, regardless of my position, I've always held the standard, like, one, I'm not your child.
Right.
That's just
Like, hey, you're
right.
not
And
gonna
if
talk
I
to me
was your
like
child, it
that.
would be wrong. But I'm just saying the boundary is I'm not your child. And two, like, you are not going to talk to me like that. So when you want to have the proper conversation, feel free to call me back. But right now, I'm
It's not gonna work.
okay. I'm
We on
not
the same
accepting it.
page.
Yeah. So
I've
I've
done that too. I've
yeah,
done that.
yeah, I've done
Especially
that. Yeah,
yeah,
I've
somebody
definitely
feel like they scolding you. I'm like, are you're not gonna talk down to me.
no,
Yeah, yeah. So
no,
when
it's not
you're
going to
not
work.
gonna yell at me.
You definitely are not going to yell. I
Yeah,
will say in a second, you know what? Call me back when you want to have a conversation. And
a
then
real one, yeah, because it's not, yeah, because it's like you're not gonna yell at me, you're not gonna
no,
scold at me, because
no,
even if you're with a phone, you can feel it and like, hey,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
your tone not right.
yeah. And that's the boundary. And that's, I know oftentimes probably in the workplace, it's hard for you to set that boundary because you feel like you are going, you could potentially be fired or
Right.
whatever.
I need this job.
But
Right.
if you don't, and I've seen other people accept that type of tone, if you don't, that person will continue to treat you
Continue
that
doing
way.
it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll talk to that person that way, but they won't talk to me that way, which
Right.
it's because I've set that standard and that boundary. I wasn't disrespectful, but I'm letting them know and making them aware, like, you will
You're
not
not gonna do
talk to
this.
me that way.
Not today.
Definitely not today.
even if they
Not
don't talk to
today.
you that way,
Mm-hmm.
and you see them talk to others that way,
Mm-hmm.
you would have to think they want to talk to me that way. And
Yeah.
even that's unacceptable. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know you want to call me this. I know you want to do this, but because I've set my boundaries with you, I still feel like you want to. Like, as soon as you leave me,
I know.
right.
I know it. And you know what? I feel like when I was younger, I would be concerned about what people were going to say, like, after I left the room. But I would stress myself out if I was concerned about what everyone said. Like, listen, I know you're probably going to talk about me. You may not like me, and that is okay. And I am okay with that at this point. But I know, and I've been in rooms where it was an inappropriate tone, and I've had to say, like, okay, so I'm not sure what's going on here, but I'm gonna remove myself because I think this is inappropriate. And I've
Mm-hmm.
definitely removed myself from that. And I mean, because we're all adults, if you're going to continue to allow someone to
Mhm.
talk to you that way in that form, then that's your decision. But physically, I may or may not have put myself in harm's way sometimes trying to defend people. So I try not to do that, and I don't condone that. But I will say something for sure if I see a physical abuse or a situation happening. I don't accept that, and I don't allow. Like I said, I don't allow anyone to talk to me any type of way.
I love my shows. I love this show. I love all my show. Voices to be heard. We talk about domestic issues, domestic violence, and get your voices out there and let your voices be heard. You can always call in. You can chime in. You can email us in, and you can tell us your story because we know in your story there's someone hearing your story and say, I too can get out of that, and or that sounds just like me. And this is why we do voices to be heard. Before we take off, Tamara, you want to say anything before we leave and see each other? What, March? That's for the next show for Voice to Be
Can you
Heard.
believe this? I don't know.
No.
The year is escaping so quickly, but no, I'm just honored to be here. I'm glad we were able to talk,
Yeah.
and just have a different perspective as well. I know
Right.
we don't talk as much about men, but it's very important that we share those stories. And again, it's important that those individual stories are heard so that it resonates and allows someone to see they're not in it by themselves. They're not
Mhm.
unique. And there are people that are going through the same thing, that have gone through the same thing. And there are also people that are here to listen and to help. So always an honor to be with you, Dr. Paul, and a pleasure to meet you, Latasha.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It was a great. I know you just so happily popped on in, and here you are contributing. And I think that's what our service to humanity is contributing. And as long as people are out there serving humanity, we get better.
Yes.
Yes, yes. But thank y'all for allowing me to speak. I said I thought I was coming back to another call, and I said, but definitely I thought it was a great debate to had a conversation with you all, and I definitely appreciate you all's work,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully, people listen and maybe apply some of the things, maybe have some resources where people can get some help.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's what people need right now. So, a little help. So thank y'all for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. You everybody have a good night. God bless. Be safe.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.